Alrighty then. Well, number one, howdy there, alien. How the hell are you doing, my friend? Thank you for letting me wet my whistle this evening. It is much appreciated. Alright, so, howdy, folks, and welcome on back to the Flying T-Bar C. So, it is time for us to be getting on into yet another Thursday segment, which is Throwback Thursday. And that means that we're going to be getting on into more Wild Arms 3 segment where we play golden oldies from my childhood and yours. Of course, though, before we get on in the game, as always, folks, you guys enjoy my streams, you enjoy my content, hell, maybe you just enjoy my dulcet tones. You can check out all the other socials, which are YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, Ko-Fi, and Thorn. YouTube and TikTok are archive and highlights. Twitter, Blue Sky announcements, Ko-Fi, and Thorn to support outside the stream. But make sure you take care of yourself before you try taking care of me. So, what do you say we go ahead, we get on into the game here, shall we? Doing good, man. How are you? Wild Arms 3? Hell yeah. Of course it's time for Wild Arms 3, alien. It's gonna be a damn good time, too. And I'm doing alright. I'm doing alright. Just grinding away at a lot of stuff. Um, so yeah. Oh shit. I forgot to make T-Bar pop up. And there we go. Now we got it. Alright. But yeah, alien, I've just been grinding away in life at the moment. Basically, it's been my whole freaking life for the last 8 months. Is I grind away at trying to do streaming stuff. So if I'm not grinding away at streaming stuff, I'm grinding away at work so that I can try to get get my student loans paid off. And if I'm not grinding away at the student loans, I'm grinding away at Lord knows what else. Feel this in my bones? Yeah. But it's all right. It's coming along at the moment. That's for sure. I'm made a lot of progress on the student loans. Like I've paid a fuck ton of them off. I'll send you a message about that stuff because I don't feel like getting too in depth with that particular information while I'm live. But I've paid off a lot of them. Okay, let's see here. Fallen Sanctuary. So we're going back that area. No worries. Proud of you for doing it, though. Well, thanks, Elian. I do appreciate that, actually. Oh, I do know that once I get them paid off, once I can get them paid off, I am going to freaking try my best, or not try my best, but I will be, I'm going to take a couple months of not worrying about trying to save money or nothing. I'm going to buy some shit that I've been wanting to buy for a while now. Like, I want to put some money into the Mog Station because there's emotes and glamour stuff that I want. So there's a bunch of stuff there, and then treat myself to some good restaurants that are kind of expensive, and yeah. So there are there are things that are going to be checked out. Nice to see that the CC is kind of up and working. I was fiddle farting with that today because I've had a guy popping up periodically who guess is deaf. I was like, I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but I will be trying my best. I think there was a door down here that we can now get into. By the way, peak as far as Western designs in video games, especially anime-esque Western designs, all of these guys are pretty fucking peak when it comes to this. One thing that infuriates me about a lot of times where they do Western stuff in video games and anime is like, A, the hats are always so small. And Clive Magoat, yes, this game is so good. Dude, I've been loving this so far, and I'm only a couple hours into it. They actually got a lot of Western style, like, Westernized stereotypes, let's put it that way. Because, like, in Western movies, it's not uncommon to have, you know, a guy from the native tribe rebelling against his tribe, right? Got the tough female lead who, you know, by necessity has to be stronger than the men around her. You've got the good-natured rogue character. Like, all of these are very stereotypical, like, Western main characters, and I like it. It's a long one? Well, I'm okay if it's a long one. Where in the... Ha, here we go. Okay, that doesn't work. The fuck? Oh, damn it. Never mind. Okay. Ah, still can't open this door yet. Why is Clive suddenly my active? Oh, right, duh. Another thing that I like about this one so far, compared to others, is the fact that this seems to actually be emphasizing the Western-ish part rather than the fantasy part. Oh, Virginia, I can't wait till we can catch you up in levels, girl. It does both in this game pretty heavily, but starts out more Western. Yeah. Although I won't lie, to me it's a very weird decision that they decided to have everybody start out at different levels. It's different than I imagined. It's hard to explain, but thought it'd be a lot more beautiful and glorious. That explained it. With a sanctuary housing guardians, the power that sustains the world, you do have certain expectations. Suits me just fine. This place is just like Filgai, being barren with only the dry wind. It's Filgai the way it is because this is how the guardians are. The other way around. Ah, who cares? Huh? I think it's trying to tell us something. Yo, what do we do? I don't know. Don't ask me. Wouldn't you be the one to know? We were a little unprepared. We should have inquired as to its proper handling. Something's beginning to swell up. I don't think I can hold it any longer. But where's the Arc Scepter? Perhaps this phosphorus is a ritual meant for the bearer of the Arc Scepter. That mean we've officially been deemed bearers? Ugh. What was that? Oh, my head. My hangovers were never this bad. Is this a migraine? This pressure inside our heads does indeed feel like one. However, this feels as if someone is calling to us from deep within our hearts. It's soft, but very loud at the same time. This really is the shrine where the Guardians are worshipped, and this voice must be. Let's go. Alright, who do we got here? Monolith is decorated with a strange symbol. Yada yada. One can cause the Guardian to materialize. Focus everyone's willpower with the Arc Scepter. Show your will to the Guardian. Yes. Visions in your mind are bound together. Ground sends waves of quakes into the distance. You feel a presence bigger and heavier than anything. Power of Earth crushes all with the Tau. Bearer of the Arc Scepter must have the strength to fight that which has no form. Fight and show your strength to Groody. Okay. Alright, so we have no mediums. That's force ability. Can't do anything else with that. Actually, I'm gonna have her defend. Fucking Clive, do your thing. Ow. Oh no. No, no, Godzilla. No. We're gonna play it a little safe on the heat. However, I am gonna go ahead and do this. And pretty decent damage. That Mega Smash. Whole fucking thing, apparently. Uses attribute damage. All right, defend reloads. Well, how did our Lost? How are you doing this evening? I had the most stressful and least stressful day ever. How the hell did you have the most stressful and least stressful day ever? Ow. Around 3 a.m. yesterday, my dogs knocked over and shattered my Lego Avengers Tower set. Today I spent 8 straight hours rebuilding it. Okay, no, I can see how you were the most stressed and then the least stressed ever. Because you went from most stressed to finding your fucking Lego destroyed. And as you were rebuilding it, your stress slowly and surely went down as you went through the zone. And then once it was done and you put it back where it's supposed to go, you were like, hey. I'm going to save them for 1 second here, guys. I have to partake in my particular bad habit. It was stressful because I didn't know if my pieces were broken or missing, but it was ultra soothing because I got to spend 8 hours straight messing with Lego. Exactly. 100%. And that was not enough to deal with my shit. So give me just a second. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that, gang. I also needed to use the restroom. Honestly, just glad it wasn't any of my ultra big sets like my Lego Hogwarts, Titanic, or Millennium Falcon sets. Yeah, I can definitely agree with you there. Especially the Hogwarts or Titanic. So I'm pretty sure they're both bigger than the Millennium Falcon. Welcome back. Well, thank you, Alien. It is appreciated. I had to, like I said, I had to grab something real quick because I can already tell that my eyelids are going to start getting kind of heavy here in a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to be settled. Copenhagen makes me feel so good. Copenhagen, Yeah, I know it, shit. Maybe I should make that a redeem. Nice. Terra Roar acquired. Medium. Medium doesn't exhibit its power just by holding on to it. You have to go to the menu's invoke command. Invoke the medium and become one with the guardian power. Each one of us can invoke up to 3 mediums. Above that will overload our consciousness and may result in terrible consequences. Once a medium is invoked, the Arcana command becomes available during battle. Arcana is an extension of the guardian's power. Think of it as magic, if you will. It can be said that using Arcana is also the key to winning. One thing you have to watch out for is the enemy's elemental property. The effectiveness of an Arcana attack can vary greatly depending on the enemy's elemental properties. So do these not do like huge stat boosts like they used to? Oh, I guess Virginia's gonna get Groot-Eve. The only reason my Millennium Falcon is a prize set is because I spent nearly 1K on it. Jesus Christ, lol. That is still insane. Shoot arc. That looks like a set of wings, so I bet you that's Moldova. Whatever the hell his name. That was Earth. I don't know. We'll just go this one. Not gonna reread all of this. Oh, okay, this is the water one. Okay, so I should have read the last message. Feel a presence kinder and more passionate than anything. Power of water engulfs you in its. Bearer of the Arc Scepter must have the strength to fight that which has no form. Fight, show your strength to Studar. Spent $860 on a Lego set, worth every penny. You know what? That makes me not feel so bad when I go ahead and drop like $100 on a video game. Okay, so that is going to be petrified shield. Let's just have everybody attack first round. And all of these guys have the same moveset apparently. Just as far as how they battle. It's all counterattacks. And then big attacks. That's minorly terrifying. Heal up. Go ahead and attack. Heal up. Oh no! Using more magic. I have a feeling I'm gonna actually end up using buff spells way more in this game. I fucking saw you, you lie. Might take your bitch ass on here in a little bit. Let's see. Ah. Whoop. Also liking the fact that you... Oh, come on. Really? That is one of my biggest pet peeves in any fucking game. Hate it when games make it to where you can miss buff spells. Unless I already had hit him with Protect. Which, if that's the case, I guess it's fine. There we go. Now Virginia's catching up with everyone. Visions of your mind are bound together. Bees turns to a blade that cuts away the cloud. Feel a presence sharper and swifter than anything. Power of wind shakes the vast wasteland. Bearer of the Arc Scepter must have the strength to fight that which has no form. Fight. Show your strength to Fenn Gottlieb. Yeah, go ahead and throw that Analyze out there. Weakness, water, and earth. Yeah, we should be fine. Nice. I feel like he's more wind. Visions of your minds are bound together. Swirling blades coalesces, heralding a new beginning. Feel a presence hotter and more ferocious than any. Our fire spreads its crimson. Early Arc Scepter must have the strength to fight that which has no form. Fight, show your strength to Morgoth. Oh shit. Oh, that's not good. I'm okay with that. Virginia up. And weak to ice. Oh, there we go. Fiery Rage acquired. Earth, water, wind, and fire. So we got all four mediums from Guardian. Mediums in their purest form are said to contain special powers. One of them is the summon. Summoning is classified as a force ability, and lets you materialize the Guardian's power by expending it. Its destructive power increases as FP is expended and affects multiple targets. A couple things you have to watch out for. One is that just like Arcana, its effectiveness can vary depending on the target's elemental properties. Two, the number of times you can use it is equal to your MT. Drawback though is that once you summon, all your FP will be depleted. 0 FP, your options will be limited. FP also affects Arcana and Force ability. Can't ignore how it affects your attack and defense power too. That you should strategically. Well then, now that that's over, I suggest we go see Holly. This was an official mission that we undertook. The proper thing to do is to go back and report. I still can't believe that the power that sustains the world is inside this tiny little plate. Even more unbelievable that it's mine. What's he doing here? Hey boss, shouldn't we go after him? We'll let them be. Only for the time being. But boss, look! Watchbird, huh? We did fail to seize the Arc Scepter. I'll have to deal with the consequences. But sooner or later, I'll have to come through for them. Or else they'll have my head for sure. Meow. Well done. I knew you could do it. Now, hand me the 4 mediums. Hold up, Granny. You're not planning on secretly switch those with imitations, are you? Bite your tongue. You think I would stoop that low? That's something you would. Now listen to me well. Each of these pure mediums has a special aura that protects the bearer. It enhances your attributes by raising your attack and defense level, allowing you to take on powerful monsters. And whoa! Quit overacting all the time. Shame on you. But the mediums? Nothing to worry about. They're all right here. Personal skills are hidden within each medium to protect the bearer. Personal skills are activated by extending PS point. Vary according to you. Their many uses vary from offense to defense. Anything else you might need to fight off monsters. I have just awakened this hidden power inside the medium. Now, invoke your medium and experience their powers firsthand. Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay. Oh, and we can reallocate points too. This is gonna be awesome. Shield an ally from physical. Critical hit. Okay, no, that makes sense for that. That also makes physical attack. Ooh, okay, so I'm actually gonna switch those two. That's going to be very intriguing. Dunes or swells of sluggish depth that corrupt the continents and cover the planet. Says that beneath them lurk evil gargantuans, prey upon vessels and steal the sands. None dare brave the dangers of the dudes. Drifters. They say mortals can speak to guardians through the Arc Scepter. One of the guardians would say, damn, such an ocean of consciousness, I think we just found. No. Well, since my foot injury, I've had to stay put here, but I think it's better now. I'm gonna get my show back on the road. We head into the next village soon. Village with Jolly Roger. It lies beyond the bridge on the shore to the sea. It being a port town, it's a place where travelers from the world. Our paths cross again too. Remember, I'm always open for business. Oh shit. No, maybe I wanted to buy something from. God damn. I guess it's time for us to leave now. Well, what do we do now? Does anyone have any pressing matters they would like to take care of? We're all out having fun releasing the Guardians. No one has any errands. Now that we're all done, let's just do our own thing. Our own thing? I suggest we head to the bustling port town of Jolly Roger. I'm sure we can obtain some leads about further missions and means of transport. That's not a bad idea. We'll find our own paths from this. Oh, we've only known each other for a short while, but we were able to complete all our missions. Let's have a goodbye party. Goodbye party? Whose? Ours? Yeah, not like we're a team or anything. It's decided then. Let us head to Jolly Roger. I really hope I don't have to go through a bunch of BS to freaking... Like, I don't want the party to split after we've already got the party together. That'll just irritate the fuck out of me. Alright, well that's north. South and west would be this way. There we go. Now we're getting some halfway to... Oops, sign. Tell me which way I have to go. Men who cry over using up Gimel coins often lose their life. It's time for Gimel coins when you find it. Directions or tips? The westerly wind heralds prosperity. Find the port of Jolly Roger to the west. Hills are. Uh-huh. Well, what now? We obviously need to get some leads in order to continue. In addition, we need rub and ale. It's so amazing how well we get along after just meeting each other. Let's liven up our farewell party with some food. Can't stand morose gathering. You mean to ask around over drinks to the saloon? Thanks. Say goodbye and discuss our individual agendas over at the saloon. Crossing the wasteland, chat. Place is proper as Harbor Town back in the day. Comes to equipment from ships and other devices, they're way ahead of other. Picking up the arms you carry, have them upgraded into an armsmith. But it can cost an arm and a leg, so you really should think it over before plunking down the cash. You won't need to upgrade lots of parts all at once either. Try picking a party member and upgrade one of his armor. That's all you really need. Crashing wave of sand bites off a little bit more of the land from the continent. Town's time will come too. The world get this way. I'm not talking about the legends and stories. I want to know the truth. Ask Volks for direction if you ever lose your way in life. He always spews authentic sounding advice on cue, even though he barely knows much about anything. Okay. That's going to be a very handy item. Ooh, fast travel. That's the saloon. Don't want to go there yet. Armsmith. Howdy. Can I help you with it? machines like armed ships and such. Ships? Looking for a ship to cross the dunes in, but you can't find one anywhere. Right? Today's your lucky day when I help you with my research. Put together the strongest, most cutting-edge sandcraft ever. Sure. What do you think? This baby's the cutting edge of high-speed sandcraft technology. Conventional sand track generates so much friction that the sand cuts into the hull. This number packs a solid load of armament while making huge advances in overall speed and durability. Here's my answer to all the hurdles confronting further development of the technology. Of course, I had to skimp a little on the weaponry to finish her, and her drive data is blank. Oh, I need 15 more dragon fossils to finish her chassis. All you have to do is get them. Just promise to record her drive data in yours. Sounds like a great deal to me. What do you say? Dragon fossils for a sandcraft? I'll help you complete it. Happy to run it, but I don't think you have enough. Dragon fossils are made into all kinds of arm parts, and there's no substitute for them. Ooh, okay. Don't think we're going to be doing that yet. That shit's expensive. Strong body will get you over the dunes and through the wasteland. You need more than that if you want to get by in this hard, tough world. You need brains. See me if you've got something you need to know. I'm always happy to help. Badge of a drifter is never given. You can find it for yourself. It can be found just about anywhere, even in this old port. Stuck, just blaze yourself a new trail. I know you'll find a path out there. Okay, let's see here. Migrant level is automatically increased. You can collect migrant seals. Your migrant increases. Cost of canceling an encounter decreases. More powerful enemy. Okay. Investor in the saloon. Okay. Handcraft dock. Ooh, those are farmable. Using magic is a good thing. Good to know. Of course, it'll happen more once we get everybody's like level 10-ish, so you can start a battle that way. Okay. I'll do... We'll do a single upgrade on everybody. Like reducing her weight is... Goes this. How did it? Without trade ships coming in, who'd want to come and stay here? Looking for leads, or quite the diligent drifter, aren't you? I love my job too. Life's easier if you like. And it's not great. It's great not having any complaints. You say, give me some info if all four of you eat. It'll be about 150 gala. Deal. Obliged. Leave it to me for good food, good drink, and good company. Oops, did I say good company? Well, shucks. Please excuse me in this mouth of mine. Here in Jolly Roger, we got lots of old tales of treasure. They ain't really all that old. Talking about a prize that none of the drifters have ever been able to get their hands on. Sparkle. Ages past, our world was ruled by a race of wicked demons, till they were pushed to the brink of extinction. Demon Knight assigned 3 followers to protect the treasure. The treasure was the Eternal Sparkle. Glad you're all such good listeners, but I need to start fixing dinner. Just have a seat at the table. Supper and get to the rest of my story in a jiffy. Man, I am full. What a good cook she is. She hooked us up good. I wouldn't worry about the time. Not only did we have our goodbye party, we got a valuable lead as well. Yeah, you got a point. Anyway, what do you all think about the information she provided? You go investigate? I'm going. I don't care what you guys do. We're working alone anyway. So, legendary Eternal Sparkle. In ages past, our world was ruled by a race of wicked demons until they were pushed to the brink of extinction. Demon Knight assigned 3 followers to protect the treasure. The treasure was the Eternal Sparkle. The 3 followers transformed themselves into seals to protect the Eternal Sparkle, waiting the return of the Demon Knight. And one of those seals lies nearby this town. She said, right? It's the sparkle part that makes you think it's some kind of gem, don't it? Aren't the legends full of these things? Unless we're sure it's worth something. I don't want any part of it. I'm out of here. Old legend, huh? Considering that they've remained strong. Either this lead is a red herring, or even if it's true, there's no doubt that it would be hazardous. I have nothing better to do, but I'm not enthusiastic about the prospect. Don't worry about it. Partnership ends here. It's outside, we'll scatter in the wind. I'll head out alone. Always been alone. I like being alone. There you go again. You can only do so much by yourself. If we stay together, we can do that much more. 4 of us have different likes and dislikes, so we should all support each other. Who cares if it's tough? As long as there's 4 of us, there's always a glimmer of hope in the darkness. We release the Guardians. 4 of us together can make a great team. I didn't expect that after our farewell celebration. You've been thinking about that. The first meeting might have been coincidence. But we didn't come all this way to our individual strengths. We did it as a team. Someday I want to say it wasn't just coincidence, it was fate. Guys, we'll make our mark as one. Well, that was a mouthful. Hey, did I say something funny? Am I missing something? Yeah, you're missing something. Never thought anyone could say stuff like that with a straight face. But you do have a point. Drifters would never leave their mark if all they did was drift. You mean? You betcha. I'm all for it. And you ain't got nothing else to do, right? Oh well. Suppose you're right. Alright, I'm game. I consider it prudent for all of us to pool our resources until we're able to set individual goals. Yippee! We're a team. Now, we're all going to seek out the Eternal Sparkle. Not so fast. Huh? What, you got some kind of problem? Yeah, big problem. That's funny. I thought you couldn't wait to head out treasure hunting. Not talking about that. I'm talking about you pestering me on my way. What nerve? Work alone. I don't have time to play with wannabe drifters. Wannabe drifters? Okay, tough guy. You say you work alone, so fill me in. Tell me what you've done. Tell everyone here about the great things you've been able to do being all by your fantastic self. Hey, I'm talking to you. Oh, before you start mumbling excuses, let me ask you what you were doing in the car with the Ox Scepter. You were planning on making off with it, weren't you? And what happened? You blew it. You didn't even have what it takes to steal it, cowboy. And here you are saying you work best when you're alone. Where did you get such a big head? What? Why you? That's not. It's not. Wasn't the only one after the cargo that night. Well, hey, that's all besides the point. So, like, yeah. So, who cares if we want to be drift? We can take it easy and have fun while we venture into the unknown, right? Right? Perhaps you're right. Look, leader. Me? Who else? Your idea, isn't it? So, leader, let us reaffirm our collective purpose. Well, we have 3 goals. Find the ruins where the Eternal Sparkle lies, work as a team, and lastly, to make the Eternal Sparkle ours. Geez, that's why I work alone. Rest, hero. Just hurting yourself. Besides, when it comes to persuasion, he trounces all of us hands down. You two listening? Of course. We're looking forward to working with you, leader. Speak for yourself, punk. Howdy. Good to see you, kiddos. Let's go. What's that face for? I know. You found some clues. Come on. Give us a little hint. Please. Why would I help a scoundrel like you? Scoundrel? Oh, that hurts. We're drifters. Sometimes our goals collide. It comes with the territory. So please, lay off the insults. You want the Eternal Sparkle. How did you've been spying on us? There you go again. Look, anybody in this town with half a brain can find that out. Much else in this town. Look. Work together. All of us, I'm sure we could uncover the location of it. Nope, I just can't trust you. I hate not trusting people, but still, I just said I'd make a team with these drifters I met out in the wasteland. Well, I can't work with you right now. Too bad. Just listen to this. I heard the Eternal Sparkle is somewhere in the ancient vault called Ruins of Memory. Believe it or not, it's your choice, princess. But we're not trying to fool you. Trust me on that one. Next time we meet, hope you'll be ready to help us out. I had to make some sacrifices to come out here and see you. Okay. Badge of the Drifter, yada yada yada. Don't say nothing different. I'm gonna go talk to that innkeeper again really quick. This is the last trait. Force become a ghost town. Where to guess this deserted hole once a lively crossroad filled with talks of riches. Let's see what all we can. Alright, we gotta wait till people get to level 10 before that we. For now, we'll just keep auto battling. Once everyone gets to level 10 and we can start popping magic out like crazy, then we'll be able to. Don't you just love it when they give you, like, they're like, oh, it's nearby the town. Actually, There we go. That's going to be how we make money in this game. Oh. Alright. Found ourselves the armory. Nice. Bet you I should have used it. Oh, nope, there we go. Pretty quick on the trigger. Drifter, it may cost you your life if you pull it. What are you doing here? I'm joining forces, Princess. Didn't mention that before. You have a name. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Janice Cascade. Pleasure is all mine. I seem to have made a bad first impression. I have every right to reject my offer. That's precisely why I want to join forces. I want to redeem myself and earn your trust. You're after the eternal sparkle. I'd like to help. Fine. Find the eternal sparkle together. Hey. What are you thinking? Can't trust this guy. As long as you're the leader, we shall abide by your decision. However, be sure you have thought carefully. Sure you have carefully thought this out. I understand you're concerned, but everybody deserves a second chance. I don't like to hold grudges. It's too hard and painful to handle. To tell you the truth, I don't trust him 100% either. But at some point, I have to do this. else I'll be skeptical of him forever. That's why I chose to trust him just now. Stood. Shall accept our leader's decision. Look, you have my utmost respect, Princess. I wish I could think like you. Actually, yeah, I did back in the day. Well, now that we're a team, what you guys gonna do for us? Information. We can provide information about the demons that have sealed the Eternal Sparkle. Tell you more once we find it. That's a fair deal. We just need you to escort us deep within these trap-filled rooms. Ah, strengthen your information. We'll get through these ruins in no time. Counting on you, Janice. Come here, Princess. Come here. Oh, they are gonna totally screw us over. Okay, weak to fire. Go ahead and do that. This is light. Man, I should have guessed that, but let's face it. Like any of us have that particular element at the moment. Oh, the things I do for money. but that money is going to be very important. Huge heap of rock resembling a human form. Could be a sculpture from ages past. Overwhelming sensation can be felt from it. Okay. Take one of the skelly boys out. But who is this? Regulators, mount up. We got ourselves a raid coming in. Howdy there, T-Swizzle and gang. How the hell are you guys doing tonight? Let me get you a shout out real quick. Did it work? No, that was wrong. Aha! Yep, I mistyped it. Hold on one sec. We'll get it correct this time. Alright, so, well, howdy there, T-Swizzle. How's it going? No underscore took me a second. No, you're good. How's the game going? So the game's going great so far. I'm learning some particulars and figuring some stuff out, but it's going good, of course, we'll run through the usual spiel, which is, howdy folks. For those of you who made it on in, I'm the Flying T-Bar C. I'm a Western PNG tuber who plays all sorts of different games. Currently, we are doing our Throwback Thursday segment where I play Golden Oldies from my childhood or yours. Currently, it's going through the Wild Arms series, and we're in the middle of Wild Arms 3, which has definitely been a blast so far. For those of you who are watching me, go check out T-Swizzle one of these days. Taylor is a live streamer who plays all sorts of different games from all sorts of different genres, especially doing blind playthroughs. He plays all sorts of different stuff. And if you put spoilers in chat, you will get mobbed. So be careful when you head on over there sometimes. Of course, Raiders, if you guys need a rated run, feel free to do so. But if you want to hang out while we play some Western fantasy goodness with Wild Arms 3, you are more than welcome to hang out with us tonight. Also, howdy there, Gravy. How are you doing this evening? Hope things are going well, friend. Darth Vader is Luke's godfather. Oh no, the spoilers. The spoilers. Also, you know what? I'm gonna go. I need to get better about doing this part too. But since he's in chat, we're gonna give him a shout out too, which is, you guys should totally go check out Alien Sin one of these days. Alien is a demonic dragon VTuber who plays all sorts of different games and lets you sin the night away without any of those pexy consequences. For looks like he was playing some Elden Ring Night Rain last time around, which, if there's anything I know about Elden Ring Night Rain, especially after watching Elian and Nia play it, it either goes fantastically well or horribly wrong. So I gotta ask, what was the verdict this last time, Elian? Was it horribly wrong, or did it go marvelously fantastic? And also, Swizzle, how was Satisfactory? I have never heard of Satisfactory, so give me a rundown on the game. Tell me what it's about. And also, hope stream was good for you. Yeah, Elian on Night Rain. How did Night Rain go, since it was apparently the last thing you played? Six says Bruce Willis was actually invisible for the entire film and green screened in. I don't know if I believe that or not, but that would actually be absolutely hilarious if it was, and it would make it... Well, no, it couldn't be, because the kid had to interact with him. It's an... Okay. It's an automation game where you build factories. Just completed another phase of the game's overarching project. So very well. Nice, nice, very nice. Can't go wrong with something like that, that's for sure. It went pretty well overall, but the last one we died pretty bad. Oh no. Did you just not get very good drops, Elian? Or did you guys just pick off more than you could chew? We died. Well, okay, no, I understand that you died, but I'm curious as to why you died. Like, was it because you guys were not able to get very good equipment? Or did a boss just absolutely fuck you up? Like, what was the reasoning here? I've seen you guys play, and you most of the time do pretty good, even if you've got bad loadouts happening to you. Okay. So, as for what, so I'm going to tell you guys this now, but I have discovered that we have a farmable item, essentially, that we can use to sell for money, which is going to be these gems. So, that's why we're trying to kill as many things with magic as we possibly can. Only the broken showcase remains, which believes to have been displayed artifacts from ages past. Artifacts from an ancient civilization. I wonder what they were like. Oh? Alright, we're going to have everybody attack a different book so that we can hopefully get some good stuff. The boss we were fighting has really high attack and defense, so without strong fire weapons and a heavy attack boost, it can kill you pretty fast. I love Night Rain though. It's like Fortnite. It was good in PvE. It's definitely Night Rain is definitely an interesting idea, taking Souls-like slash Elden Ring style gameplay, but turning it into a big arena like that. It's kind of wild how they actually were able to mash those together so well. Because, like, I would have never thought of a game like that being done with that style of gameplay. Haha, got you that time, you motherfucker. I was cleaning out the trailer a bit today and I had the door open and ended up letting a bunch of flies in. So I've been waging wars against flies all day. Yeah, I never expected it, but it's been so fun. They just need to add more content to it. Alright, so there's a good question then. This makes for a good conversational piece. But what kind of content would you like to see them add? I mean, obviously, new maps, new bosses, stuff like that, but is there a personal wish list that you would prefer to see? Vice is keeping the door shut. And not that. Aha! Glass walls can be exploded open. Good to know. Used to live in a place that had a lot of flies. If I left the window open with the screen. Okay, if I left a window with the screen on it open, they would flock there. Then I hit them with the electrical racket. Nice, very nice. Maps, bosses, characters, weapons, and definitely new skins, clothes. And there aren't a ton of glam options at the moment. Okay. So, I mean, obviously maps, bosses, characters, and weapons, all that stuff combined is obviously just stuff within the game. Maybe you'd have to buy the new characters. But I could picture them doing two options with glam. Because they could turn around and, you know, obviously make skins and stuff like that viable. But you could also do it where it's like rewards. Use a certain character or defeat a certain boss and you get some clothes that are based off of that one. Which I think that would be kind of cool. Also, Elian, since I know that you are a fellow Final Fantasy XIV player, I've been meaning to ask, how are you coming on your last relic step? The last time they did a DLC, they added 2 new characters, 2 new bosses, and a new map for like 15 bucks. I'd like to see them do it again. Okay. Yeah, 15 bucks is not bad for that. Booby Trap is set. Gallows, you open it. Sorry, can you repeat the question? Okay. So, how are you progressing on the final relic step? Or how far are you along in your relics? In 14, exactly. God, I haven't done it, but Nia's on the last step. I play more FF11 than 14, but I mostly log in these days if people need help. Okay, makes sense, makes sense. I say I'm on the last step too. I just finished out, like today I grinded out all of the level up dungeons that you need to grind out for that last step. As well as I cleared out what was the name of the area? Wakanpelo, I think. It's the mountain region with the giant guys. Like I killed all the monsters and did the fates in that area, and I did all the level up dungeons today. And I've been just running expert and high level. I'm hoping it'll clear out the other stuff. If you ever want to play 14, Nia's on pretty often. You can always DM her. I will have to remember that. I don't have a very consistent group to play 14 with anymore at the moment. Let's say, although most of them should come back when Evercold starts up. Oh, speaking of Evercold stuff, I might have already asked you about this in your stream, but what did you think of the Bastion job reveal? I'll be back for Evercold. If Evolve Mode makes 14 jobs more like 11 jobs, I'll be so excited. I'm very interested in seeing what that ends up being like exactly. Because I know they're being pretty tight-lipped about what this Evolve system is. Looks really cool. I don't think I'll play it personally, but we know so many people who are very excited for it. Okay. I mean, obviously I'm going to level it, just like everything else. I'm going to have Gallows do it, because he... Ooh. Okay, so the booby trap does not. Okay, that's nice to know. So the booby trap doesn't hurt people, just. So I don't know if Bastion will take Gunbreaker's slot on my rotation of jobs, but we'll see. I won't lie. Having a giant cannon while being able to uh punch things sounds like a pretty awesome job for someone who mains monk. Now, what I want is for jobs to have unique moves and agency. Also, since they're getting rid of the 2-minute meta, I hope they'll go to a system where enemies do moves randomly instead of everyone just memorizing a fight and doing it over and over. Okay. That'll definitely be interesting. Because getting away from the mechanic dance would definitely change everything up. I just wonder where that would end up leaving the Savage raids. And for unique moves and agency back. Tank jobs in 14 and Evercold are going to have roles now. Oh, okay, so they're actually going to split it to main tank and off tank. I mean, it makes sense because you start running into the issue of too many jobs are doing the same thing. So this will allow them to, gear Gunbreaker and Dark Knight to being a little bit more damage based and all that. So it's not a terrible idea. I think it's a pretty good idea, actually. I left the game because all the jobs were the same, just with different animations. No, that definitely makes sense. I know that is a sore spot with a lot of people. In FF11, for example, on Dragoon, I can DPS, tank, and heal. Now, see, I don't think that they'll go that far with 14. Because then you're going to really run into, like, I feel like that's going to make it to, like, the goal with that, with a change like that would be to get everybody to play other classes more. But I still feel like it would end up leading to a lot of issues as far as, like, classes being underpaid. Or underplayed, not paid, sorry. They won't, but seeing Dragoon have a 90% damage mitigation move gave me hope. You know what? That's also fair. I am curious to see what the next DPS job is going to be. There we go. Let's do. I like how they're coming up with more quote unquote original jobs for stuff, but I would really like to see. There's a few classic FF jobs that I would like to see get introduced into the game, though, just because I think they could be really cool. One would be Spellblade. I think a legit Spellblade class would be really cool. I have an idea to make Gambler work, although with the new system being implemented, I don't know how it would work. Like, I guess it depends on how they're gonna do, like, resource gauges and stuff like that going forward. People think Falconer or something along that line. I think it's a good guess because everyone has been complaining 14 has no real pet jobs like 11. They kept promising to change Dragoon, but they went back on it, so I think the new job will be their attempt at a real pet job. Uh, 11 has Rune Fencer as a tank, so people are hoping for that, but with them saying only new jobs for 14, I don't think we'll see it anymore. That makes sense as far as them not bringing other stuff back. Now, as far as the pet job stuff goes, I would like to see them get an actual pet job going. And who knows, maybe Beastmaster's kind of a test run for doing something like that. Because if Beastmaster ends up working out a certain way, and also thematically. So, one thing I've noticed, at least like in Summoner's case, you know, over the years it went from a Summoner and Scholar went from a pet class to, especially Summoner went from a pet class to more of a classic Summoner. Personally, I love the current Summoner. Beast Tamer is going to be its own quarantined road-like mode from what I hear. No, yeah, so I know that that's how they're going to do Beastmaster. But it could very well still be a test run, because from the way it sounds, as you run through your roguelike, you'll be able to get, you know, multiple monsters and be able to command them and stuff like that. And I feel like that might be kind of a precursor of, or maybe it'll be the foundation of an actual pet job setup that relies on your pets. With Dragoon, if they finally, like, if Beastmaster goes well and they're able to lay that foundation out, I can see them potentially switching Dragoon up enough to where you have a dragon companion. Which, again, would also make it more thematically correct, because in, you know, previous FF history and all that, half of the Dragoons that exist are Dragon Slayers, like what we're currently sitting on with 14. But the others do have dragons as companions, at least narratively. So, with the way that they changed, uh, Summoner to be more thematically similar to how Summoner normally is, I could see them potentially trying to do something like that. Same when they did the Machinist rework. And they essentially turned 14 Machinist into Edgar from Final Fantasy VI. I don't think they'll fix Dragoon in 14. On 11 we have a pet, and in 14 I miss it. Well, that is always sad to hear. It wouldn't really be an original job, but I've got another idea also, because it was in one game specifically. I don't think I've seen it in any other game since. But for those who have played Tactics Advance, in the original Tactics Advance, they did have a Beast Tamer class, but they also had the Morpher class, which allowed you to transform into a monster. So that was always, like, I feel like that could be a really interesting job. SE's plan is normally to focus on new jobs and abandon old ones, which is what Evercold respecing all the jobs interests me so much. Makes sense, makes sense. I wouldn't say they abandon all the old jobs. I think people would like Morpher a lot depending on how they did it. Yeah, like it could be really interesting. Because, like, they did the Big Summoner rework, they did the Machinist rework. I think they focus the new jobs and they pick a couple of the older ones to go ahead and do a bigger rework in order to, add new mechanics to a job or whatever. Because, let's see here, since the beginning, they did a big rework on Machinist, Summoner, Monk got a huge rework with the Blitz system. And then they added in all the other gauges and stuff on other stuff, but I felt like it didn't necessarily change how a lot of classes did stuff. Oh crap. Oh, well, that's dumb. I'm gonna have to go all the way around, aren't I? Rework for SE often means gutting a job so that they can give the removed functionality to new jobs. Sadly, you're not wrong with that. As much as I wish I could refute that, you're not exactly wrong. So, but I am very interested to see how they're gonna go with certain stuff. It's also gonna be interesting. So you brought up how they're gonna do main tank and off tank roles. So does that mean it's also gonna change the queue up? Or I wonder if it is gonna change the queue up for it, so that in an 8-man party, you're guaranteed to have a main tank and an off tank. Okay, I am trapped. Just go all out auto on this. Fucking Clive, man. There's so much damage. It's going to be hard to get a main tank queue on everything outside of leveling, with everyone leveling Bastion. Yeah, you're not wrong there. Healers will have a great time though. Exactly. It also means, like, DPS queues should not end up being super terrible either, I think. They'll still be kind of rough because of DPS jobs. Well, yeah, I mean DPS just because of the pure number of DPS jobs. Will have a hard time. Plus, there's the fact, like, pure numbers wise, and the new DPS job is gonna, yes, cause it to be a bit of a pain in the ass still. Uh-oh. Oh no, I should have bought some antidotes. Ah. That opened this other door back up. I'm still very excited for Evercold though. I will fully admit though, one thing I'm not super stoked about the 24-man raids. Like, I think it's gonna end up being cool no matter what. But I have to admit, the only thing that I'm like super stoked for with that is I'm hoping, beyond hope, that we can get the main Evangelion song. because that'll be going in my Orchestrion 100%. I'm sure we will. Yeah. Okay, good. I can get back this way so I can keep going the way I'm supposed to be going. Ooh, lucky card. Okay, so now they have a card for both things. Instead of it, the one card doing two things. Oh, damn it. Shouldn't have done that. Well, maybe Clive will use his magic. Guess we can hope. Nope. Okay, so definitely gotta turn auto battle next. Did you guys leave Virginia alone? The things I do for money. I'm also very excited for Revelations. I want to see what I want to see how this experiment is going to end. Although part of me is going to be kind of sad because I bet you my favorite part of Remake is not really going to be in Revelation. Or not Remake, Rebirth. Sorry. Uh, Gilgamesh. I don't think. I have a feeling we're not going to get Gilgamesh shenanigans, which is going to make me sad. Maybe as a secret quest. Maybe. Maybe, if we're lucky. Although, on the flip side, getting to see all the weapons... Like, getting to see all the weapons in Revelations is also going to be really wild, I think. Okay, I need to lurk, but it's been good talking to you as always, man. Of course, Elian. Well, thank you so much for the lurk, and thanks for hanging out and BSing with me for a while. And I'll be seeing you around, Pard. Guarantee that. Ruins of Memory catches your eye. Read it, yes. Roots of ancient technology have been excavated from ruins all over Filgaia. Many of these historic rare items, such as the Giant's Rock, excavated from the Earth layer before the Great Ancient War, are all preserved here. That is why this place is called Ruins of Memory. All the relics on display have been carefully restored. Please be careful to not touch the relic. Technology is not something that necessarily evolves or improves over time. It may stem from an advent of genius, or perhaps from the fruition of time and effort. Technology can even make great strides during times of war, where unexpected innovations are invented. In fact, many highly advanced technological artifacts are excavated from a certain layer of the Earth. A layer which dates back approximately 1,000 years, according to folklore. This coincides with the period of the Dark Ages, Great War with the Demons broke. A period where war necessitated technology. New methods of destruction were invented one after another. Technological revolution finally came to an end. The world could no longer connote this technology. In other words, destruction of civilization. Lost demi-human. Who were these demi-humans that appear in historical records? They are said to have resembled humans, but possessed great power unknown to man. They were said to have synchronized with nature to perform incredible feats. Similarities between the demi-humans and Bhaskar, members of the Guardians, are noted, but nothing can compare to the scope of their power. Who were these demi-humans that are said to have existed on Vilgaia? They come from? Why did they disappear? Might interest you catches your eye. It's healed by magic. Hmm. You know what? Fuck it. Let's do it. Have a duplicate. No. Okay. Gonna need to make a note about that so I don't fucking forget. Man, I gotta look. There's a. Everything has a page or two of notes. My trails notes. That's all my shit for 14. So we're gonna make a new thing. Arms 3. Turn ruins of memory with duplicate 4. Also hidden door fallen sanctuary. And there was wait, actually hidden door. I could just add to this treasures and other starting areas. I'm a little old school this way. Family of demons catches up. Read it, yes. Folklore paints a vivid picture of invasion. Forefathers recount the fear of demons who were covered and steeled with the blood of Mercury. Demons massacred a multitude of life forms and brought about mass destruction with flames of atrocity. But as time passes, we've begun to utilize the artifacts they left behind, as if we are now the spawn of demons. As long as we are human, we must embrace our prestige as a race, proudly and accordingly. Built by magic. Oh, we can't open that chest yet. Pop that cremate off. There we go. Nice. Very nice. God damn, the encounter rate in this game is fucking insane. Dude. Weakness is ice. Okay. There we go. Okay, well, at least I got an antidote. This is empty by one. Aha! Got it to work that time. The Eternal Sparkle. And a select few have actually come into contact with it. I think it's for sure much greater than any jewel or precious metal known to man. Great power is bestowed upon the one who comes into contact with it. It grants a spear that can destroy all life. That is the Eternal Sparkle's true essence. That's all rubbish if you ask me. There are, however, average people in this sick world who do or pay anything to get their grubby little hands on it. Janice, what do you think you're doing? Coming all the way here, hired by some dubious blokes, covering myself in filthy dust. Guess you can call me avaricious. Thank you, Princess. I really enjoyed your company. Now, if I may, let's go cash in my treasure. Janice, you tricked us, you double-crosser. Tricked you? Heavens no. Oh, almost forgot my end of the bargain. This here is a shield. It bears the name of the demon Hirako. It's kind of like a good luck charm. Aside from this Hirako, 2 more shields. Andro Cryo. Eternal Sparkle is said to be sealed by all 3. I now hold one of the 3 shields scattered throughout the world. The second one is currently being excavated, and the third one seems to be in the hands of a certain drifter. Of course, I plan on stealing that one in the future. I'm sorry I made a fool out of you. I was just doing my job. As I've told you before, we drifters are neither good nor evil. We're either winners or losers. Now, make way before I'm forced to hurt you. I tried my best to trust you. My comrades had doubts, yet I went ahead and joined forces with you. I want to try my best to believe, so badly to trust, and then... Saved a sob story, Princess. That's just how the game's played in the wasteland. I won't let anyone make a mockery of people who are trying so hard. That's what I like about you, Princess. Yes. You're starting to get on my nerves. Be the wrong way by carrying all that inexperienced waste into the wasteland. You remind me of my youth back when I was still green. You're a reflection of the old me. A figment of my past. Watch as I trample over you. Dario, pull yourself together and shut your fly. I'm good to go, boss. Mara, don't be shaking in your boots. Set to go, boss. Prepare to execute the Trinity. Go all out here. Doubles XP rewarded. Consumable. Enemy Gelek. Well, I guess we're gonna fucking figure this out. Oh, wonderful. Okay, Analyze is gonna be useless on these guys. And we need to target him, as is capable of healing his comrades regardless of turning it. Fucking time, too. That's gonna be awfully. Let's do this. Might check that out. What happens? Gonna need Virginia to get up to a certain. You know what? For the sake of the experiment, fuck it, let's do it. Gonna be late. Dario, Romero, you hold him off while I go back and report. Boss, let's suicide. You know we can't use the Trinity without you. You're just making us as pawns so that you can make your escape. Bet your wine and bring back the Hirako shield. Who will? Listen up. For once in your life, fight like you've never fought before. If you're still alive, meet me at the usual place. So it's just you and me, huh, bro? No, I read somewhere that in times of crisis, people have power to accomplish the impossible. Do or die now. Go all else. Go all out, or else the boss will have our heads, for sure. It's gonna take a burning house for me to build up that power. Ain't gonna amount to much. Anyway, let's just make sure we don't die out here. Best we can. Okay, Jet really does do jack for fucking magic damage. Let's do it this way. Ugh. Only our boss were here, then you guys would have been dead meat. Sounds like an excuse from a sore loser. Sure, there's more where that came. Get off your high horse. We'll make you regret it you ever met us. These guys make me sick to my stomach. What's the matter? Sorry, only I hadn't trusted them. I'll say. Cannot, cannot let mistakes here and there get you down. Remember, you are the team leader. You're right. The Eternal Sparkle really is such a deadly artifact, we can't let them have it. And from what Janice was saying, they haven't tamed all the shields yet, right? And if we act now, we can still stop them thugs from obtaining the Eternal Sparkle. Most likely. What are we doing standing around with our heads hung low? Go back to Jolly Roger and find out more about the remaining shield. Fast travel me back? Huh? Alright. Now we'll let loose with some magic. Nice, there we go. And Shop Dude's not here anymore. Fuck me. Died? There we go. This we're gonna save. Oh. Okay. I'm gonna need to research that because I did not realize that the upgrade level. Okay. Because there's limited amounts of upgrades. So yeah, we're gonna have to be careful with that. I'm gonna research some stuff about it. Natural to guess that there are really 3 shields. The spell that sealed the Eternal Sparkle. Here there's another place just like the Ruin of Memories out west. Heading west from here will take you to the region of Westwood. I suggest going by rail. Can't deal with her yet. Will sooner or later. Janice Cascade. Handsome, capable man, but he puts it all to waste. Drifter who only listens to himself might sound cool and all. That man is just a ravenous bully. I'm not the most streetwise person, but I think you should steer clear of that scum. Not all drifters are do-gooders. Heard that it used to be covered in green there. They still make a living by raising horses. Creatures aren't happy. Lend no ear to the plight of ships. These days, land routes are more practical than sea ones. Safer to take a train. The train station is to the northwest. Monsters started showing up, they can't repair the chains quickly enough, so right now they only just go west. Long ago, that place was the central junction for all railways from all over Filkaya. Okay. Well, the difference between birds that stay put and the ones that migrate is how they use their wings. They may be out hunting for treasure or out digging for themselves. Wings of a drifter never go to waste. They're always out finding a new way. Alrighty then, gang. So, I think we're going to go ahead and call it there for a night. I've got to work in the morning. Well, here in a while, so I got to make sure I can actually get to bed at a decent time. My sleep schedule's been all futzy and screwed up, so we got to make sure that we are getting some shit taken care of when it comes to that. So, I want to say thank y'all for tuning into the Flying T-Bar C this evening. Really appreciate you guys' viewership. Whether you were chatting or whether you were lurking, I appreciate all y'all all the same. And of course, a big shout out to T-Swizzle and his gang for raiding on in. And for those of you who stuck around for the whole stream, you have my utmost appreciation. I will be back tomorrow with more Fantasy Friday, where we are playing through the Final Fantasy series. That means we're going to be diving into chapter 3? Yeah, chapter 3 of Final Fantasy 13. Party has been split, shenanigans will be had, and we are going to discover just how good I can be at that game, because we're not going to do a lot of grinding if I can help it. So yeah, it's going to be a hell of a time, guys. Of course, don't forget to check out all them other socials: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, Ko-Fi Throne. YouTube and TikTok are archiving highlights. Twitter and Blue Sky announcements. Ko-Fi Throne to support outside the stream. But please, make sure you're taking care of yourself before you try taking care of me. For those of you who are a part of the regulators, feel free to copy and paste this raid message as we raid out for the evening. And as for who we're going to raid out to this evening, let's see here. Good night, Teebsy. Well, good night, Gravy. And once again, as always, it was good seeing you, Pard. And thanks for the stream, of course. And thank you for hanging out. It's fun as always, dude. Yeah. We raided out to her already. Let's see here. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm digging through some stuff. Huh. You know what? Here's a rando that's playing a game that I like quite a bit, so I think we're going to head on over yonder that direction. So, we're going to be raiding on out to Ananabi. Looks like she is some sort of witch VTuber, PNG tuber. But the reason why we're heading on over that direction is because it looks like she is playing some Final Fantasy IX, which is a fantastic game. And I think it's going to be a fun time over there. So that's where we're going to head out to. So, with that raid timer now started, as always, folks. I just woke up when I came in here. These closed captions are hilarious. Well, I mean, hey, they work, right? I guess. I just woke up when I came in. You're fine, Gravy. Don't worry about it. So, anyways, back to the outro. Alright, now that raid timer started, folks, as always, make sure you guys enjoy yourselves some good food, some great drinks, even better company. And I'll see y'all on the outside. Wait, I'll see y'all on the flip side. Happy trails, folks.